Well, good evening. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good to be with you. If you saw the post on Facebook on the Unity page, then you know we're going to be looking at awakening the third eye in the holographic universe. So it might sound strange if you're not familiar with these kinds of teachings, but I think it'll be very clear as we move along in our conversation. One of the things that I hope you get present to is how these new paradigms of physics are really just an echo of these ancient teachings that have been going on for thousands of years, and also how immediate the experience is when you're ready for it. That it's not very complex, it's actually very simple. That what we're going to be looking at is really the one who's looking. The witnessing consciousness is the secret to the whole show. That's why you don't really have to do anything to be what you are already, right? You were created perfect, you might say, and you will remember perfection when you turn your attention back on the one who's observing. The observer or the witness is the great mystery that all of the great masters and teachers and teachings speak about. So in many stories that we've covered over the past, you're that jewel that's been hidden in the jacket that the Buddha spoke of in the Lotus Sutra, that you're wandering around thinking you're lost and lonely and bereft of what you need and want, and meanwhile you have the wish-fulfilling gem in your own lapel. You have everything already. This is your truest nature, that you are and have everything. It's the pearl of great price. It's the treasure hidden in a field. The kingdom of God is within you. Or as Jesus likes to say in A Course in Miracles, the kingdom of God is you. Now we have to train the mind to accept that about ourselves, because we have a different version of me. The story of me isn't the kingdom of God. The story of me is not the infinite observer within the state of grace forever. Right? And so we're undergoing this training of the mind, this reorientation, or what Jesus again will call in A Course in Miracles, a thought reversal. And what he means by a thought reversal is that we undo, again another Course term, level confusion. The level confusion is we are perceiving ourselves as this biological form, and we think we're located within time and space, within bone and flesh. That is confusion. The real level in which we're experiencing this moment from is the transcendent consciousness that's actually projecting itself into the transducer system of the biological being. So you're a spaceless, timeless, dimensionless, non-local entity. You can't die. You were never born. As Krishna says to Arjuna, water can't wet you, fire can't burn you. You're the immortal soul. You are the Atman. Tattvam asi. You are that. Aham brahmasmi. I am the Brahma. So when you realize this about yourself, you undo the level confusion, and then you actually begin to reflect grace and light and love within the space-time field of perception. And that is your destiny fulfilled, or as the Course would say, your true function. Your true function is to be the light of the world, because you are already the light of the world. You're just having a dream. And the level confusion is you think you're the dream figure. You're actually the dreamer. And the dreamer's dreaming this experience from what David Bohm, the physicist, would call the implicate order. This is where we're getting into the holographic nature of the universe. So in Bohm's concept of the universe, and Bohm was a very well-known, renowned physicist, a colleague of Einstein, and a good friend with Jiddu Krishnamurti. I don't know if you've ever gone on YouTube and watched those conversations between Krishnamurti and David Bohm. They're very nice. So David Bohm was influenced by more than just hard science, but he wanted the sacred to be explainable within the hard sciences. So he set about recognizing that within the quantum model of reality, we can see that there are these two manifest orders, or rather one manifest order. The other is the unmanifest order. The explicate order, as Bohm would call it, is what we're seeing right now through the five senses. Chairs separate from people that can sit on them, people separate from other people that are sitting next to each other, objects that don't seem to have any connection whatsoever. This realm of the explicate order is the realm of separation. And the implicate order is actually occurring simultaneous with this and actually projecting it. This is Bohm's idea. And in the implicate order, everything is already one. And it's holographic. In other words, everything contains everything. The whole is in the part, and the part is in the whole. That's what we had said earlier in A Course in Miracles. He says, you are and have everything. That's holographic. The part is in the whole, and the whole is in the part. He says God created, and this is A Course in Miracles again, God created himself as you. Again, a holographic paradigm. All of deity abides within you and within me. We're centers of consciousness, but at the very depth of our own center is the totality of deity. We are and have everything. That's why we can project ourselves into the explicate order. The problem is we have amnesia now. We forgot. We forgot who we are. The dream became so real, we got lost in it. And so now we're preparing the mind. If you're here listening to a teaching like this, you're preparing your mind to return. This is the great return. And so we are being trained to know how to discern the real from the unreal. And just to explain this a little bit in poetry, we're familiar with William Blake. And William Blake had said, to see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. Right? So in other words, this infinite, eternal consciousness, God consciousness, is enfolded within everything. And so when we begin to discover this, we wake up to the bliss and the joy that is actually here and now, and we are this, and we join with one another knowing that all of this is already sacred. We just have to allow that to come back into our own consciousness, and then we'll see it everywhere and in everyone. Okay? So that's going to be our journey tonight. And I'd like to start off with, and this is what's fun for me anyway, when we start to unpack these deeper concepts and we begin to pick up this unifying theme of science and spirituality, it's like you cannot not see it in these very familiar ideas that you may have heard or read thousands of times. So in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, he had said this, lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And then he immediately goes into this. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? In light of this holographic paradigm that we're talking about, lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth. In other words, turn your attention back to where you really are as the witness. You're in the timeless, dimensionless, non-local state of pure being. right now. The one who's listening right now is timeless, spaceless, dimensionless, pure being. How do we know this? Because you sit in meditation and you turn your attention upon the nature of the witness. And when you become completely still and watchful, it will be a process of going in. You eventually become this aware, insightful being that knows you are not in time. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not your body. You're not an object. You're seeing all of it. How can you see what you are? The eye can't see itself. The eye lays witness upon phenomena. You're not phenomena. This is going to be even clearer when we go into Zen Buddhism in a little while. And you'll see again how it will reflect and complement what Jesus is saying. Don't keep your focus upon perishable things. Turn your attention to the imperishable, the one who's witnessing. And when you do that, you awaken your third eye. You awaken this inner vision. This inner vision is what sees immortality. It sees the timeless in time, right? So these are practices that we have to do. Right now, for many of us, they're just words and concepts. But what makes these words and concepts different is they keep nudging you. They're pointing out instructions. So they're not words and concepts about things in the world and ideas within the world. These are words and concepts that keep saying, look over here, turn around, watch the watcher, pay attention to attention, become the witness in this present moment. That's the type of instruction that these words and thoughts convey. They're designed as a vehicle to take you from the perishable to the imperishable, from time-bound consciousness to the timeless state of eternity, from the darkness that Jesus was talking about to the light of pure being. That's what Buddha said. His teaching is a vehicle. It's a raft. It takes you from the shore of conditioned existence and it brings you back to nirvana. These are words and ideas that convey your consciousness back to the shores of the stillness within. That's the whole purpose of these talks and meditations on a Saturday evening. They're designed to usher you in to yourself. And then you realize you are and have everything. You're the treasure that's been hidden from you. So think about how powerful and important your attention is. The attention that you give is where your heart goes. That's your treasure. So you could even do that inventory for yourself. What do I really pay attention to? What matters to me? That's my heart. That's where I'm laying up my treasure. Very important. So your attention, when it begins to turn upon the witness, takes you into the direct experience of the timeless. That's how powerful your attention is. That's why Madison Avenue wants to capture it. When your attention is captured, you're captured. Right? So we talked last week using Bob Marley to free yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. How do we free our minds? Through attention. The other thing I wanted to make mention of here is, in light of the third eye teaching, it comes from St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, his second letter. And he says this, "For we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. For in this we groan, earnestly desiring to be clothed upon with our house which is from heaven. If so be that being clothed we shall not be found naked, for we that are in this tabernacle do groan, being burdened, not for that we would be unclothed, but clothed upon, that mortality might be swallowed up of life. So, two bodies. You have a physical body and you have a heavenly body. You have a body of flesh and you have a body of light. One is mortal and corruptible and will pass away. The other is eternal in the heavens. In other words, the body that's in the implicate order, the body that is timeless, spaceless, dimensionless, non-local. Paul is just using the language of his day. But these are our inheritances when we begin to know how to claim them. So that when we look at the teachings of yoga, and this specifically is the Kriya Yoga of Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda's guru, you can hear Paul and what he has to say. Now, Sri Yukteswar is considered a master of Vedic astrology. And so Yogananda was having a conversation with his guru about this astrology or Jyotish. And Yukteswar smiles at Yogananda and says, there is a deeper astrology, not dependent on the testimony of calendars and clocks. Each person is a part of the Creator or cosmic man. He has a heavenly body as well as one of earth. The human eye sees the physical form, but the inward eye penetrates more profoundly, even to the universal pattern, of which each man is an integral and individual part. Right? So layered within all of that, you have a physical body with your brain and nervous system, right, with your five senses. You have an inner body or a transcendental body of light, and that's what the third eye is really. It's an inner sensorium. It's your spiritual vision. This is crucial to getting out of level confusion. Your spiritual vision is the deeper witness that we're talking about. And so Yukteswar is saying that you are an integral part of the cosmic being. The part is in the whole, and the whole is in the part. So what is all of this? And I could feel it in the room, I think. The old paradigm is really being challenged. The old paradigm is a paradigm of isolation and separation. And there's a solid me here that's trying to interpret and listen at best to an idea that seems too outlandish to even comprehend. There's no referent in the paradigm of the separate self that could ever take this on. That's what Paul calls the mind of the flesh. The mind of the flesh is the physical experience that you're having. And he says the mind of the flesh wants nothing to do with God or the body of light or the higher witness or the getting out of the dream. The lower self or ego is the dream. And if your attention is sold out to being the ego, your attention is captured. And you're going to listen to the ego's voice, and it's going to keep you in the dream. That's its agenda. That's its goal. And it will make you feel like you're a victim of the world you see, not the cause of it. You're lost in the dream of separation, and you're just this lowly little speck, and everybody else is different from you and not you. When you wake up as the dreamer, you realize everyone is you. This is the mind of the spirit. It sees the underlying unity and holiness and wholeness within every part. This is the game that we're playing with ourselves. We're either willing our sleep or we're willing our awakening. We're either willing our death or we're willing our resurrection and life. It's all up to you. You're the center of your own consciousness. And how you choose to direct your attention and your intention, that's what you'll get. So you determine your treasure. But if you do put your treasure in the corruptible, be prepared to be disappointed, rattled, full of anxiety and fear, and eventually to sigh in despair and breathe out for your final breath as you shuffle off the mortal coil. And as we always say, you take your state of mind with you. So, this mind training is so crucial to not only your present happiness, but also your destination and how you see yourself post-mortem, right? So this has a lot to do with Jungian psychology. And before we do that, I think we should just maybe settle into the breath. Anchor, become still. And so we set the intention to experience eternity within this hour. To open to the state of grace, which is at the very core of our being. And we ask the guides, the masters, and the Holy Spirit to remove all obstacles, to undo all of our psychological defenses, both conscious and unconscious, so that we can breathe the holy air of our own freedom that is our true state of being. So it is. Before we go with Jung, there was something that I read today that seemed to be shareable with our conversation this evening. And it's a short essay on Bohm's holographic model. And it's put into the context of our spiritual practice as well. And so what this author is saying is that our current perspective of what is called Newtonian science, where everything is separate from everything else, is quickly, if not really now at this point, become obsolete. Right? We are waking up to the underlying unity of life. And he says that this obsolete explicate perspective of traditional science, conceiving the world as consisting of ever smaller fragments, reflects itself in the fragmentation of humankind into nations, religions, groups, families, with isolated individuals who disintegrate into further fragments. So you could see how this paradigm of consciousness is still being reinforced, where we have these views that separate us off for whatever reason, religious, political, etc. We are fragmenting through a paradigm of consciousness that is also in large measure being pushed by the social norms of our day, right? Staying within the body identity is the consensus reality that we are living in. And it's designed to not only have you stay fragmented, but a fragmented state is a fearful state. And when your mind is in a fearful state, you're always looking for the threat or the enemy. You're always defensive. And so there is this knee-jerk reaction to attack, to judge, to blame. And that gets hardwired, and our attention stays fixed within that paradigm. So you could see how that is a very unhealthy way of living because it's counter to who we really are. If we are, according to these deeper teachings, the one who's projecting this order of reality, that we are the whole being, the one self, and we're seeing ourselves split up into these sparks of individual forms, and we're attacking those individual forms, it's all self-attack. It's delusional. So we need a different paradigm in order to come back to a state of peace and therefore leave this prison cell of separation. So he says, Bohm sees in this conception the origin of chaos, violence, and destruction. But just as the manifest world is one with the non-manifest order on a deeper level of consciousness, humankind is one. For this reason, the collective problems of humankind enter the individual, who, however, in connecting to the cosmic totality, may sort out the collective pollution. That's a huge statement. So he says, the collective problems of humankind enter the individual because it's a holographic reality. You are humanity, and all of humanity's problems are within you. And then he says that you then sort out the collective pollution within yourself. So when you clear the mirror of your mind and allow the light to shine back on you, then you do that for all. And you see everyone as yourself. It's because everyone is enfolded within you. Everyone is you. So the part is in the whole, and the whole is in the part. And as you bring yourself into these deeper places of purity, compassion, loving kindness, you're giving that simultaneously to the whole. This was one of David Bohm's major reasons for coming up with this understanding of the holographic order, because he was working at the quantum level in physics, and he realized that these particles that are entangled affect each other even if they're light years away. And so everything is simultaneously affecting everything. When you have a thought of love and kindness and compassion, that goes into the collective field and it affects the collective field. Everything is entangled. Everything is one. And everything is affecting and influencing everything else. That's why you're always in the driver's seat. You're always at the level of cause. No one can do anything to you that you don't allow to be done to yourself. You're choosing it, and you're influencing others by your choices. So then he asked this question, what is the source of compassion and love? Bohm explains that the whole construction of the implicate order is a bridge. However, one has to cross the bridge and leave it behind. leaving behind thought, the whirling in the manifest, and the conditioning of the non-manifest, in order to reach the underlying void that makes consciousness a vehicle or instrument of totality, of intelligence, compassion, truth. The way out of chaos is through meditation, which actually transforms the mind. Nothing that is produced in our consciousness can replace this transformation. So meditation, as we're going to see in more detail, is when you empty your mind. You turn your attention completely on the witness, and you no longer allow the lower thoughts of the ego and the distractions of your emotions in your physical body to deter you from resting in stillness on the witness. And as you do this, you come to a state beyond the mind. Sri Nisargadatta says that the witness is a gateway into pure being. So the more you focus your attention on the witness, your attention becomes one-pointed, and you go through the doorway of the witnessing consciousness back into the infinite pure being. There you're completely transformed. You die to the individual self, and you come back as the universal self in individual form. And then you can see the pattern of unity in everything and in everyone, and you radiate the presence of this oneness by just being you. That's the state of grace. This is the preaching of the gospel that St. Francis talks about. Sometimes you use words, but most of the time you're preaching the unity of being through your very presence. So the turning within isn't just this solipsism where you're focusing on your individual self as a witness. No, you actually go through the concepts of even thinking of a witness. You go into the state, the experience of witnessing. And then that witnessing state, as it says in A Course in Miracles, pulls you into grace. It's a gateway that pulls you into grace. Once you have that experience, you'll never be the same again. You're out of the dream. And even though you may come back and have these experiences and still fall in the mud and still forget sometimes, that experience of having gone out of the dream, what is called revelation, will always be with you. It's imprinted upon you now. You'll never forget that this is a dream. And so you become increasingly more compassionate, increasingly more calm, because you realize that everything that's happening at the level of form is not real. It's a projection. And because you have gone beyond the projection, you no longer find that you're lost in the drama of it. So he says meditation is what really gifts us this experience. Transformation is scarcely recognized by those that still subscribe to scientific skepticism. But why, for thousands of years, one has to ask, have monasteries and communities existed that allowed countless individuals to experience other states of consciousness? Why have people from every culture throughout history reported inner visions and other realities that are inaccessible to anyone who does not experience them directly? In view of the holographic concept of an implicate order of many interpenetrating systems, the time may be coming when we realize the inadequacy of attempting to continue scientific inquiry purely on the basis of visible and measurable reality. So what we're seeing, I think, in everything that's hitting the fan in our culture, I mean, with the files that have been dumped, with all of the information now that we're seeing, how things are really operating behind the scenes in terms of power and what's really been going on since the ancient world. It's nothing new. We're seeing the destruction of a paradigm. And so it's going to feel like a death, right? It's going to feel like the end of the world is approaching. And in one way, it is. But those who go through into the new birth or the new paradigm or the new perception are preparing themselves, right? So one of the stories that came to mind recently is that little, I don't know if it's an Aesop fable, where is it the squirrel that's busy gathering all the nuts for the winter? And he's running around and working really hard to get all of his food, his sustenance stored away. And I think, is it the grasshopper or something that's just kicking back and saying, what are you worried about? It's a beautiful day. Enjoy yourself. And there is this preparation that's being done by the squirrel. And then winter hits. And the squirrel's nice and warm, has everything she needs. All the food is there. And the one that was kicking back and just taking it easy, nothing's to worry about now, just do nothing here, is out in the cold and is struggling and starving. And what I'm saying is that this is your spiritual time for preparation. You have to anchor your psyche into something more real than this physical world. This physical world is going to go through major convulsions. It is already, if you're paying attention. Your roots have to go deeper. They have to go back to that implicate order, to that place where you really are the truth of yourself. That's meditation. Meditation is emptying out, having paid attention to all of these ephemeral things. Begin to pay attention to the treasure in heaven. Lay up for yourself this unshakable reality. This is the game that will allow us to go through the problems that we're facing. We have to come to terms with this ever-changing and uncertain world. And the only way we're going to get through it is if we find that there is an unchanging truth and sanctuary within our own consciousness. So, in the teachings of Buddhism, there's a tradition that went from India to China, and it went from being called dhyana to Chan. And then it went from China to Japan, where it was renamed in Japanese as Zen. And so this Chinese Chan Buddhism is exactly what we're going to be talking about or exactly like what we've been talking about as the holographic paradigm. Chan, or Chinese Zen, had mapped and experienced this holographic order 2,000 years ago. And one of the things that we want to recognize then when we look is that there is this implicate order where everything is connected, everything is one, and it's being projected as the explicate order of time and space. The implicate order in this tradition is called the Tao. The explicate order is called the De, or the power being displayed. So you're familiar with the Tao Te Ching. It's a book by Lao Tzu, supposedly, that is the way and its power, right? And what is being said here is that the implicate order, like the ocean, gives rise to the waves of the explicate order. The explicate order is a manifestation of a hidden state. So the Tao gives birth to its expression within the outer world. What makes this important to recognize is there's never a separation. The ocean and the waves are never separate. So our experience of perceiving just the level of the waves makes us think that this is all there is, and we are just a separate wave amongst many separate waves. When we learn how to meditate, which is what is dhyana or chan or zen, when we empty our minds, we come back to the Tao. And the Tao is what makes life harmonious, because we ground into the inner pattern that Sri Yukteswar was talking about. This, he called it the deeper astrology. What Jyotish is the network of light. So we ground into the deeper pattern where light is in its harmonious network of flow or da or power. And we flow or surf the waves of light. This is what the Chan Buddhists will call prajna, having the wisdom to know how to surf the waves of light. And in order to be able to surf the waves of light, in other words, being carried along by the Tao, you have no self. Wu, sin. No mind allows you to become all. And that's the game or the practice of Chan or Zazen. You empty your consciousness. And when you do this as a practice and you realize that what you've been calling yourself, this identity center, begins to discorporate or deconstruct or dissolve upon the impact of your one-pointed witnessing consciousness. It's an object. It's not the subject. The witness is the subject. You're eternal. This identity center is born in time, was given a name, has had experiences as a biological being that it calls its story. But when you really deeply examine it, it could never be you. But it's captured your attention. And for all that you can consider it to be, it is you. Until you train your attention to go back on the witness. And then the identity center or ego begins to loosen its grip and dies or dissolves. And you go back into the implicate order. Now, another name that the Taoists and the Chan Buddhists gave this implicate order, as I had mentioned it, it's called Wu. W-U. And in Chinese, that means no thing. So there's a famous koan, if you've studied Zen Buddhism at all. The first koan that's given when you begin to train in this practice is a student goes to the Zen master and says, "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" And the Zen master replies in Chinese, "Wu." And you're supposed to sit with that. Wu. Mu in Japanese. And you sit with it. Does a dog have Buddha nature? Absence. No thing. That dissolves your identity center. You go back into the absence. And you realize the entirety. That is yourself. And then you realize there is no dog. There is no Buddha. There is no meditator. There is the absence or the All-Father manifesting. And that's where the Taoists and the Chan Buddhists will talk about Wei Wu Wei. Have you heard this? Wei Wu Wei is doing, not doing. It's often translated as that. But it's actually doing Wu doing. So you're now allowing the infinite allness of your deeper self to act through you as this expression. I and the Father are one. It's not me that does the works, Jesus says in John's Gospel. It's the Father that does the works. It's Wu Wei. It's not me who's speaking. It's the Father's words that I speak. It's Wu speaking. So we come back to our ground. Jesus says that's when you build your house upon the rock. And there's nothing that can intrude upon that or threaten that. So this is what we're looking at when we look at the deeper teachings of Taoism, but also the holographic paradigm. The implicate order is giving its expression as the explicate order. And when Wu is manifesting, it manifests as presence. So the chair has presence, these bodies have presence, your thoughts have presence. They come from the implicate order and they manifest. But then they immediately go back into the implicate order. Everything is coming up and dissolving, coming up and dissolving. When quantum physicists look at electrons, they're saying that they blink out of the void and appear, and then they go back into the void. They blink in and blink out. Everything is blinking in and blinking out. Everything is pixelated. The only thing that remains steady is your witness consciousness. That's why in quantum experiments, the observer or the witness changes the behavior of the electrons. Everything is malleable to the witness. And when you really know yourself as the witness, who's out of the dream, and in this state of grace, walking on water isn't a big deal. Feeding 5,000 isn't a big deal because you recognize the holographic nature that everything contains everything. And you can change the order of things because of your witnessing state. Right? That's the awakened state. So it says here, this is a very good book if you're into learning more about Taoism and Chan or Zen, China Root by David Hinton. And he says, to understand Tao, we must approach it at its deepest ontological and cosmological level, where the distinction between absence and presence arises. Foundational concepts that also frequent Chan texts. Presence is simply the empirical universe, which the ancients described as the 10,000 things in constant transformation. And absence is the generative void from which this ever-changing realm of presence perpetually emerges. Lao Tzu describes it succinctly like this: all beneath heaven, the 10,000 things, it's all born of presence, and presence is born of absence. We can translate this into Hindu Tantra, Shiva, and Shakti is the power, or Da, that gives rise to all time, space, and matter. Shiva is the void of eternal stillness. Shakti is his power that then manifests. But Shiva and Shakti are one. Sada Shiva. And in anticipation of fuller discussions to come, it's important to understand that absence is not some kind of metaphysical dimension. It is instead simply the empirical cosmos seen as a single generative tissue, while presence is the cosmos seen as that tissue individuated into the 10,000 distinct things, constantly giving birth to new things. So the generative tissue is this underlying substratum of Tao, that is us, where our witnessing consciousness lives, and then we manifest from there into the explicate order. which is really just an energetic expression of this underlying substratum, a projection. In its primal generative nature, this cosmology assumes a more elemental experience of time. Now listen to this. This gets to our next and final, most important instruction for tonight. In its primal generative nature, this cosmology assumes a more elemental experience of time, not linear, like past, present, and then future, the familiar metaphysical river flowing past. It's not even cyclical time, a time in primal cultures that is imprecisely described. It is instead an all-encompassing, generative present. This is what Jesus calls a holy instant in A Course in Miracles. He says this instant is all there is to time. The witness right now is in the only place of generation within this experience of manifestation. There is no past. Past is an idea. It's always now. Your past was a now, your future is going to be a now. Your only experience always is this instant. And it's this instant that you generate your experience as the witness that is not in time, but you're the creator of your experience, the dreamer of your dream. And you're always doing it now by what you pay attention to and what you treasure. You don't like what you've been manifesting and creating? Meditate and empty out. Undo what you've made. Deal with your habits and your shortcomings and your upsets. Let them dissolve in the silence of pure witnessing. So it's an all-encompassing generative present that might be described as an origin moment or place, a constant burgeoning forth in which the 10,000 things emerge from the generative source tissue of existence. Absence or Wu or Tao, burgeoning forth into presence. And as we will see, this origin moment is the abiding essence of Chan or Zen practice. You live here consciously as an awakened Chan master. So in this Chan process, he says, thoughts are appearing and disappearing, and it reveals within the mind that you see everything appearing and disappearing. He says, with this comes the realization that the cosmology of absence and presence defines consciousness too, where thoughts are forms of presence, emerging from and vanishing back into absence, exactly as the 10,000 things of the empirical world do. So this is in the Vijnana Bhairava, one of the great meditations, is where you focus on your breath and you realize that your breath has three parts. You have an inhale, and then you go into a shunya, or a 0 point. There's no more inhale. It goes into the void. Then you have an exhale, and then that dissolves into the shunya, or the 0 point. Your breath is doing this. It comes into presence as an exhale, and it goes back into the void. It comes out of the void as an inhale, and it goes back into the void. Your thoughts are doing this. Whatever you're experiencing as your thought right now comes out of the void, stays for a little while, goes back into the void. Your emotions, your bodily sensations, empires, everything is doing this. Comes out of the void and goes back into the void. The meditation that Shiva gives Parvati is that you focus on the shunya. You focus on the 0 point. Go into the gap. Realize that the gap is the womb of infinite potentiality. This is where you want to rest. Don't get caught up in the outgoing or the incoming, the ups and the downs. That's all samsara. That's all endless pain because you're never stable. You're never safe. You never arrive. You're never at peace. Turn your attention onto the witness, and that will take you back into the 0 point. The 0 point is your own inner stillness. And when you do this, last step here, you come to realize that from your center of consciousness, the chi or the creative power is flowing. And you can now mindfully, lovingly direct it. So this is what he says. An even more dramatic expansion of our conventional sense of identity center mind is distilled in the root concept of heart-mind. The natural Western assumption would be that these meanings refer to a uniquely human consciousness, but it's also often used philosophically in describing the non-human world as the intentionality, desire, intelligence that shapes the ongoing cosmological process of change and transformation. Now listen to this. Each particular thing, each living thing, at its very origin, has its own heart-mind, as does the cosmos as a whole, and can therefore be described as intentionality, intelligence, desire, infusing Tao or absence and shaping its burgeoning forth into presence, the 10,000 things of this cosmos. It could be described as the intentionality inherent, the inherent ordering capacity shaping the creative force of chi. Your creative power is you're emanating energy that shapes your world all the time. You are creative. You're making your reality constantly by what you pay attention to, what you make real, and that is every living thing is doing this, shaping its reality through this endless burgeoning forth of life force and consciousness. You're influencing everything by the way you're focused. So what a gift to know this, and what a beautiful practice to cultivate insight and how to perfect and master this, so that collectively we can begin to actually shape what the Course calls the happy dream. This is where the light of the unity comes back into our awareness. Well, my friends, we're going to have to call it a day. That was fast. I had more planned. Let's just sit for 30 seconds or so, or a minute, and then we'll pass the blue bag around. So just feel the presence of the witness. And feeling this state of pure awareness, just extend that realization that everyone here is also that state of pure awareness. Dimensionless, timeless, spaceless, already one with all that is in purity, love, and grace. Let's manifest this. Let's be uncompromising and vigilant and dedicated to bringing about the transformation of this state from confusion and chaos to harmony and peace. We are the ones to do this because this is who we are. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Blue bag's going to go around. If you're not already part of our Monday group and you want to deepen this mind training that we're talking about, A Course in Miracles is a perfect place to be. So we're here 7:15 every Monday. We bless the offering with the intention that it become the presence and the power of the one truth that we all are, in whatever form it may take. And so it is. Amen. Thank you. All right, let's rise. Centering within the heart-mind and realizing that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen. Have a beautiful